Okay, so this problem is about distance. And before we go ahead and do this problem, let's talk about distance in general. And the way we're going to talk about it is with regards to units. Okay, so let's talk about a unit of speed. Of course, in class, I would ask you guys what's the unit of speed, and we'll go from there. But since we don't have that interaction, I'll just come up with something. Okay, so mph, right? Or in other words, miles per hour is a unit of speed. So if you take a look at the rate or the speed, we can see that the meters part is a measure of distance, and the hour part is a measurement of time. Okay, so we can get from here, we can get that the rate is going to be the distance divided by the time. So what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to memorize rate is distance over time in order to do this problem. You could think about the unit of rate because it's very common, and then think about what the numerator is a unit of and what the denominator is a unit of, and you'll get to the formula without memorizing it. So some of the variations that you'll see is that rate times time equals distance. So all we're doing from this one is we're multiplying by time to both sides to get rate times time. And then if you multiply by time here, the times cancel and you're left with distance. So this is what we're going to use in this problem. So a private plane leaves Midway Airport and flies due east at a speed of 180 kilometers per hour. 2 hours later, a jet leaves Midway and flies due east at a speed of 900 kilometers per hour. How far from the airport will the jet overtake the private plane? So one of the ways for us to start off is to draw what's happening. So if we start, and of course none of this is to scale, so I'm just drawing it just to make sense of the problem. So we're at Midway Airport, and I'll just say MA. And you're flying due east, so this is a private airplane, so I'll just say private airplane flies due east, and we know that they do it at 180 kilometers per hour. And then 2 hours later, the jet leaves in the same direction at a speed of 900 kilometers per hour. And this is the, this is the jet. So we want to find out, because 900 kilometers per hour is much faster than 180 kilometers per hour, but they started 2 hours later, right? So we want to find out how far from the airport, so our origin is here, how far do they have to go before the jet that started 2 hours later overtakes the private plane? So let's organize our data, and we're going to do it in terms of a table. Okay, so we'll say R, T, and then D, right? Because R times D equals R times T equals distance. So let's set up the problem that way. Please apologize. I apologize for my crooked boxes, but that'll do for now. So the first one, we're going to talk about the jet, and the second one, we're going to talk about the private airplane. So their rates were given, so I'm just going to fill that in. The private jet was 180 kilometers per hour, and the jet was going at 900 kilometers per hour. So what we can do is, if we say that the jet leaves at time X, or however long it takes, then the private airplane has 2 hours more added on because they started 2 hours earlier. Okay, and you could have easily flipped this scenario and say private jet or private airplane is X, and then the jet would be X minus 2 because it left 2 hours later. Either way, it'll work. So now we're just going to fill in here because distance is the rate times the time it's traveled. So for this one, I don't think it'll all fit, maybe. x plus 2. So I'm just multiplying rate times time to get the distance. Now we want to see when they're equal, because at one point they have to be at the same distance in order for the jet to pass the private airplane, right? So we're going to just set this to equal to each other, and that'll give us how long, right? So this is 900x, and then distribute the 180, so it's 180x plus 360. And then we're going to start trying to isolate x. So we subtract 180 from both sides, or 180x. And so we have 0 to 7. So we have 720x is equal to 360. So that means x is 360 divided by 720. Or let's see, what can we do? So we can simplify that to 36 over 72. And then 36 over 72 is, so 36 goes into 72 twice, right? So we can simplify that to 1/2. So what that is telling us is that half an hour after the jet leaves, the jet and the private airplane will be at the same distance. Okay, so from the Midway airport. But the question was asking, how far from the airport will the jet overtake the private plane? Right? So we don't care about how long it would take. This gives us our unit of time. We just want to know what's the distance. So we have to plug this back in to find the distance. So we do 900 times 1/2. And this one, you can do either one, right? I'm just doing the top one because it's just x instead of x plus 2. So it's a bit easier. So if I do that, I get 450. So to answer this question, when the plane and the jet is 450 and the unit that we use is kilometers away from the airport, the jet will overtake the private plane. Okay, so there's a whole lot of steps here, but you have to make sure that you answer the question or the problem that you're trying to solve. Because I could stop here. I found x, right? But that wasn't the goal of this problem. So you always have to think about what are you looking for and what you need to do to find that solution. Okay?